Good morning, everyone. Are you able to see me and hear me? Just put in the chat, please. Yeah, good morning. Good morning to everyone. Rishabh, Rupita, Akansha. So great that we are here for this RBI session today. Okay. So before we begin, I just wanted to bring to your notice once again, which you've been probably reminded in every class, that we have sent you all an email. So we sent an email to all the candidates, the eligible candidates for this training, which is the SC/ST OBC candidates from the North Zone. So a mail has been sent to you by ixamBee on how to activate your ixamBee live courses. So kindly look into that. You will have free access to the phase 1 training and exam. Also, at the end of the class, do remember to give us a feedback on the session so that we can make improvements in the session. And of course, it goes without saying that आप सब्सक्राइब करेंगे हमारी चैनल को तो आपको हमारे जो फ्यूचर में लाइव क्लासेस होंगी उसके बारे में नोटिफिकेशन भी आता रहेगा. Okay, so the voice and screen is okay. आज हम लोग करेंगे, we shall be beginning with the Reserve Bank, for which all of you are very excited, I'm sure. There we go. So this is the quote I begin from Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson was the US president in the 19th century, of course, so long time back. And see, I've always been afraid of banks, he said. I do hope that this doesn't hold true anymore. But yes, people are a little afraid of banks, more so of the Reserve Bank of India. And so we are here today to dispel and to demystify some of the notions which prevent us from understanding the bank, and therefore we are afraid of the bank. Our intention is today to see that after the session, you are not at all afraid of at least the Reserve Bank. So what I plan to do is that we will go through some of the important, there are many functions. Reserve Bank is a full service central bank. You see, it has multiple functions. There are central banks which have limited functions, and there are some central banks like the Reserve Bank which is the full service. So in addition to the traditional functions that a central bank does, it also does much more. Okay, so I hope the voice is clear, loud and clear, and the screen is visible. So let's begin with the organization. So what kind of an organization Reserve Bank is all about? आप लोग एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ज्वाइन करेंगे जिसके बारे में थोड़ा सा नॉलेज होना ज़रूरी हो जाता है, especially when we are answering questions. Then there are some basic things we should know about the organization. I was looking at the chat, so there will be a little distraction. Yes, Zoom. Yeah, it's full screen. Sakshi says loud and clear. And Manisha, it's full screen. I hope you can see the full screen now. So Reserve Bank, like most of the banks have a head office. In the RBI, we have a central office. We call it the central office, and the central office is situated in Mumbai, with 27 regional offices and 4 sub offices. In other words, we have 31 offices in all, and the map that you can see here would give you an indication of where these centers are located. So with the central office in Mumbai, and you have major offices in New Delhi, Chennai, Calcutta, Bombay, of course. Then you have practically in every state capital. The new offices are in Shimla, Dehradun, Raipur, in the northeast, Imphal, Aizawl, Agartala, Gangtok.
Alert from Google Chrome. RBI.
These are smaller offices. And so out of 27 offices, there are 4 sub-offices. The 4 sub-offices are in Goa, Panjim, which is not even shown here in the map. Here it is. So you have Panjim, and you have one in Aizawl, and one in Imphal, and one in Kochi. So these are the sub offices. That means they are doing a limited function only, and these are normally under the in charge of a general manager, who is the OIC in charge. Now we also have 5 training colleges, of which the important ones, there is the new ones, the College of Supervisors and the College of Supervisors and RBI Academy. Now, both of them are essentially new institutions set up with the explicit purpose of training the supervisors. But the College of Supervisors normally, here you can read this: to augment and reinforce supervisory skills among its regulatory and supervisory staff. So, of late, we have been seeing that there is a lot of focus and emphasis on supervision and regulation. Many banks are failing, many banks are in trouble, and RBI normally is at the receiving end, sometimes saying, what is the supervision of RBI like? So they have decided to have a college of supervisors where they would train and upgrade the existing knowledge and skills of its own staff. However, in the RBI Academy, which is also a training college for global supervisors. So see, when we say it's a full service, we are going beyond a traditional central bank function. Then we have the College of Agriculture Banking. Don't go by the name Agriculture Banking. Once upon a time, it was called the College of Agriculture Banking because it was specifically focusing on this segment. But now it's called CAB Pune, and CAB Pune trains cooperatives, the rural banks, RRBs, and the cooperatives. And then, of course, the Reserve Bank of India Staff College at Chennai, which is for the training of the RBI staff. So when you all join, you begin from here. There are 4 zonal training centers. The 4 zonal training centers are situated in 4 zones, that is in East, West, North, South. And these are for the grade A officers, grade B officers also go there, and the assistants. Now you must also notice that RBI, other than the central office and this establishment that I've spoken about, we have 2 important boards. The central board is there, of course. There is a central board, there is the local board, and the Board of Financial Supervision. The Board of Financial Supervision, very important Board of Financial Supervision. In 1994, it was constituted with the intention that they would be focusing on giving guidance to the role of the Department of Supervision. The constitution of this is there are 4 directors from the central board, and you also have the governor who's on the board. Deputy governors are the ex officio members of this board. The job of the central bank is to worry. This quotation is from Alice Rivlin. Alice Rivlin is an economist. She is the vice chair of the Fed Reserve in the US. So if central bank doesn't worry, then who will? So this is what I was talking about, the central board. Also, we have what we call as the local boards. So central board is in Mumbai, whereas local boards are in 4 regions: east, west, north, south. They comprise one member from the central board, and they have local expertise from that particular region. So the boards comprise of people from various walks of life. They could be chartered accountants, they could be well-known economists, they could be the administrative services people, or they could be professors from the IITs and the IIMs. So in addition to the Board of Financial Supervision, you also have the Board of Payments and Settlement. These are the important boards. Okay, any questions on this so far? If not, then we move further to the functions of the Reserve Bank. There are various functions, but we are going to talk of the 8 critical functions of the Reserve Bank, which are listed in here. It is a bank which issues currency. It's a banker to the government. It's a banker to banks. It conducts monetary policy. It manages foreign exchange. It's a regulator and supervisor of banks. It's a regulator of payments and settlement systems, and it plays a developmental role. We will take these functions and try to understand a little about each one of them. So the most important function that a common man, a person who doesn't know much about Reserve Bank, but what does he, when you ask him what is Reserve Bank, वो क्या कहते हैं, रिजर्व बैंक कैसे उनको जाना जाता है? How can anyone tell me how would you describe Reserve Bank when you tell your father about it, or your mother about it, or your brother, or your friend? What is Reserve Bank? Which is one function that comes to your mind? Once again, the function is currency management. Every one of us, when we handle notes, we handle coins, and so for the common man, the first way it is not bothered about the monetary policy or the foreign exchange, or what's happening in the credit policy. No, the common man, for the layman, it is a bank which issues currency notes. So governors' signatures are there on the notes, but are they on all the notes? Ask yourself this question and let me know. So let's understand a little about currency management. This is one of the core functions of RBI, because RBI is empowered to be the sole issuing authority as far as currency is concerned, and it is mandated, as a part of its function of RBI. RBI is responsible. It is the responsibility of the Reserve Bank to ensure that you have clean notes and you have genuine notes. What do we mean by clean notes? You've noticed that many of the Indian notes in particular are soiled very easily. We have a tendency, you and I, people have a tendency to write on these notes telephone numbers, love messages, reminders. You use it as a notepad. So RBI's duty is to ensure clean supply, so it has to ensure that the soil notes are removed from the system and fresh notes are injected into the system. And of course the genuine notes. When we say genuine, what do we mean by genuine? There are no counterfeits in circulation. It's a big challenge. There is counterfeiting of notes, but the number is quite low as compared to many other countries. So where do we get this power from? It comes from the RBI Act of 1934. RBI was established on 1st April 1935. The act is RBI Act 1934. Please remember this. So now, as far as coins are concerned, the power comes from the Indian Coinage Act of 2011. But I must distinguish here that while currency includes both, when we talk of currency, includes both banknotes and coins, the coins are issued by the government of India. The banknotes are printed by the Reserve Bank. So there is this distinction. Who prints banknotes? RBI prints banknotes. Who mints coins? The government of India mints coins. Remember this distinction. It could be a question. So then you must be wondering, if government of India is minting the coins, then what is RBI doing with the coins? Well, RBI is only pushing them into the system. So the government mints are there at Noida. You have one in Alipur in Calcutta. There's one in Hyderabad. And they mint notes based on the indent given by the Reserve Bank. Yes, the Reserve Bank will give an assessment to the government that this is the amount of coins we would need in following denominations. The coins are minted, they come to the Reserve Bank, and it is introduced into the banking system through the Reserve Bank. Now, before the Reserve Bank came into existence, the work of bank and coins both was being attended by the controller of currency. So now it's clear to us that RBI is the sole authority to issue currency notes. Currency includes both coins and notes. RBI puts them into circulation, and coins are therefore RBI's assets because they belong to the government of India. Notes are the liabilities of the Reserve Bank. Coins are the assets of Reserve Bank. Yes, there is no restriction on the number of notes. The denomination, it can issue in any denomination, but there is an upper limit that RBI cannot issue notes beyond 10,000 rupees. Now, of late, you may have heard of coinization. 20 rupee note has become a 20 rupee coin, 10 rupee note has become a 10 rupee coin, and 5 rupee note has been replaced with a 5 rupee coin. This is called coinization. Coinization is being introduced to increase the life of the currency. What happens is the average cycle of these small denominations was very low. And so we would spend more time, more money, more energy, more expenditure on printing small denomination notes, which would get soiled, which would tear, which had to be destroyed. So there is this RBI policy of coinization, where small denomination notes could be coinized. Okay. There are certain important things about the notes that you should know. The security features. There is the color changing thread. Now, you ask people, they pick up the note and do like this without really understanding what they're seeing. Basically, there is a thread running through which changes its color from green to blue when you tilt it at an angle. This is a high-level security feature exclusive to India only. No other country can use this color of change from green to blue. Then, of course, you have the Mahatma Gandhi's portrait in the watermark window. You can see it against the light. That is called the watermark window. what is important is intaglio printing. It's raised printing. When you close your eyes, you can feel it with your fingers. And there is micro printing, some small lettering which you may not be able to see with the naked eye. With the ink that we use is called OVI, optically variable ink. Any questions? Any questions so far? So of course these are, I would not spend much time on other features. The important features I've already discussed. Okay, so we go back to our next point. Any questions on issue of currency? I don't see anything coming in the chat, so I do believe you are able to understand what we are discussing. These questions are, your phase one. Some of the questions can come from these topics. The next is function, banking function, what we call as the banking function. Just like individuals have bank accounts and they go to the bank when they wish to withdraw money, when they wish to deposit money, when they wish to take some loan. Similarly, the banks also need someone to go to. RBI is the lender of the last resort. And the banks can open their current account with the Reserve Bank for banking services. Similarly, the governments need a banker. So the government accounts, whether it is the railways, whether it's the income tax, whether it is the Government of India, all of the accounts are with the Reserve Bank. So we are both a banker to the government and a banker to the banks. Now, when we are entering into a banking relationship with the central government, it is understood there is no agreement. But with the state governments, we have to enter into an agreement separately. So each state government enters into a separate agreement with the Reserve Bank that you be our banker. So we keep hearing a lot about the monetary policy, monetary policy stance of the Reserve Bank has changed, and bankers are very much excited about when the monetary policy comes out, any changes that happen. So monetary policy is a responsibility which the Reserve Bank is mandated under the RBI Act 1934. And why is monetary policy so essential? Because what is the mandate? Reserve Bank's mandate is to here there should be its policy should be such that there is a balance between growth and price. So if prices are stable, they would hope to achieve growth. It is a delicate balance. It's not very simple because when you have growth, you need more liquidity. When you have more liquidity, it leads to inflation. When it leads to inflation, the prices rise. So the growth comes down. So therefore, RBI's monetary policy is such that it has to ensure that there is price stability along with sustainable growth. Now, we have what we call as the monetary instruments. These are basically interest rates of various kinds which are used by the Reserve Bank to achieve this purpose of maintaining the balance. And many of them have been discussed in earlier classes, so I am not spending much time on it. But yes, repo and reverse repo rate, the bank rate, and the open market operations. So repo rate is a transaction where the securities are sold when RBI wants, depending on whether they want to inject or withdraw liquidity. And that process is called the open market operations. This process of sale and purchase of government securities. Bank rate is something which is where the RBI rate for commercial, given to the commercial banks for lending purposes. So when there is more liquidity into the market, what does RBI do? It has to squeeze the liquidity. How does it do that? It sells the government securities, gets the money into itself, and thereby reduces the money supply in the markets. So the excess money comes back to the Reserve Bank and securities are sold. And when it has to reverse the process, it goes into what we call as the reverse repo. I hope you guys are able to see the screen. Can somebody put it in the chat, please? Now, there is one more instrument. It is it's different from the bank rate or the the interest rate. It is called moral suasion. What is moral suasion? It is, if you've noticed that RBI issues circulars, it issues advisories to the banks asking them to comply with the general monetary policy. So if it wants, many times the RBI will reduce rates so that the banks can pass this on to the customers. But sometimes you see that while RBI has reduced the bank, ultimately the bank's board has to take commercial banks, they have to take a call how much to pass on, how much not to pass on, or not to pass on at all. So that is where bank uses moral suasion, tries to morally persuade commercial banks to act as it would like them to do. That's moral suasion. The fifth function, important function, and I would say after currency management, for the common man, the next important function is that of RBI as a regulator and as a supervisor. Let's understand the difference between what is regulation and what is supervision. Now, as a central bank, RBI regulates the banking system, certain banks. So when it regulates, it issues directives, guidelines, circulars, which are compiled into what it calls as the master circular, asking the banks to act in a particular manner, asking the banks to comply with certain directions, etc., etc. So that is your regulation. The RBI is regulating commercial banks, state cooperative banks, district cooperative, central cooperative banks, and the UCBs. This also includes the foreign banks. Now, when we talk of supervision, so as regulator, it will issue licenses to the banks. If some bank wants to open a new branch, it will issue them a license. If the bank has to expand its branches, it has given directions to them, circulars telling them what are the essentials they should have when they would like to open new branches, maintaining of reserves. If the bank has to be amalgamated, if there is an issue, it will issue PCAs. So basically, it is keeping what we call as Garud Drishti. In our mythology, you have Garud, the big bird, which was used which has been used in many of the stories where the kings, even Ravan, he was flying on the Garud, and Vishnu's vehicle is also Garud. So RBI is like that Garud with a Garud Drishti, supervising and regulating the banking system. What is supervision? Supervision includes what I've told you to do, to act, to follow, to comply. Is that being done or not? And that is why RBI has two ways of doing this. One is through on-site and off-site. So on-site means I send my team of people at the other end of the bank. They go to certain important branches, they go through the papers, vouchers, guidelines to see whether that particular bank has complied with RBI directions, or if there is any aberration, that is to be pointed out. On-site supervision. Off-site supervision, we ask the bank, we possibly can't go to every bank, every branch, because there are so many of them, some small, some insignificant, some major. So we get returns, RBI gets returns from these banks. So they could be a weekly return, it could be a monthly return, it could be a quarterly return, it could be a half-yearly return, it could be an annual return. From the returns, we get certain data which is analyzed, and we pick up signals from there about the health of the bank, and you can always then question them. Please also remember that our banks like the National NABARD and National Housing Bank and SIDBI and ixamBee, these are also regulated by the Reserve Bank. Regional rural banks are not supervised by RBI. They are regulated, yes, but not supervised. So who are the ones which are supervised? All scheduled commercial banks, excluding RRBs, but including local area banks, LABs, what is known as LAB, payments banks, small finance banks, SFBs as we call them, UCBs, the urban cooperative banks. Of course, then you have the NBFCs and all also a part of what the Reserve Bank supervises. Of late, this particular system has also become, this particular function has also become very important, because आजकल क्या हो रहा है, ऑनलाइन एंड ऑनलाइन सब लोगों को इनकरेज करा जा रहा है कि आप लोग ऑनलाइन जाइए, एंड साइबर फ्रॉड्स बढ़ रहे हैं. So someone has to be, RBI has stepped in as a regulator of payments and settlement systems to ensure that only the regulated entities are involved in payments and settlement system. Okay, let me take a little pause here and have a look at the chat, because my system was not functioning on chats. Yeah, there are a lot of questions coming in here. Okay, he says screen is visible, but the font is too small. Sorry for that. Let me first increase the font size for each slide. Give me I think this size should be okay, size 18. So quickly let me So meanwhile, as I go through the chat, you can have a look at this. The small fonts have been made big for your benefit. Chong says, sir, can we totally rely on the class material from your team? Yes, our team is working very hard, Chong, and you can certainly depend on our mock tests, which are of very high quality. You can depend on the BPedia, which is weekly and monthly, updating you on many of the things. Okay, I am going very fast. Somebody wants me to go slow. Uh, so what I'll do is, since many of you have said that you are not able to see, I will repeat the first few slides for your benefit. So let's start with this slide. That should be okay. This is going to take us a little time. Just bear with me. Yeah, this is a little too large to fit in. So okay, so let's now go through the slides once again. I started with the organization, central office in Mumbai, 27 regional offices, 5 training colleges and centers, College of Supervisors, and RBI Academy. These are the new colleges established by RBI recently. College of Supervisors, as I told you, is for the internal staff, internal supervisors, internal inspectors, and RBI Academy is for the global central banks. You have the CAB in Pune, which caters to the cooperatives and the RRBs, and you have the Staff College, which caters to the RBI, which trains the RBI's internal officers. Okay, this you've heard about the Board of Supervision, the Board of Financial Supervision. The central board is, the RBI board comprises the central board. Then it has the local boards. Local boards are in all the 4 regions. अच्छा, थोड़ा हिंदी में भी पढ़ा देते हैं। तो आप देखेंगे कि रिजर्व बैंक का जो बोर्ड होता है, ये इतना ज़रूरी नहीं है। ये तो आप समझ लेंगे, बोर्ड ऑफ फाइनेंशियल सुपरविजन को इसलिए इस्टेब्लिश करा गया था 1994 में, जिससे कि एक प्रकार की गाइडेंस मिल सके फाइनेंशियल सुपरविजन के लिए। इसलिए इसमें 4 मेंबर्स जो होते हैं वो हम सेंट्रल बोर्ड से लेते हैं। गवर्नर होता है और उसके साथ में डिप्टी गवर्नर्स भी होते हैं। बोर्ड ऑफ पेमेंट एंड सेटलमेंट इसलिए आ गया है क्योंकि आजकल जो हमारा सिस्टम्स हो गए हैं ऑनलाइन, पेमेंट का और डिजिटल पेमेंट्स शुरू हो गई हैं, इसलिए इसका भी बोर्ड ऑफ पेमेंट्स एंड सेटलमेंट है। तो ये 4 इम्पॉर्टेंट बोर्ड्स हैं। अच्छा, मेजर फंक्शन जो हमारे हैं, एक तो हम नोट इशू करते हैं, वी इशू नोट्स। करेंसी का क्या मतलब होता है? करेंसी में दोनों नोट्स भी आते हैं, कॉइन्स भी आते हैं, लेकिन हाँ, जैसे बाद में आपको बताया था, करेंसी के जो नोट्स हैं वो रिजर्व बैंक के पास होते हैं और कॉइन्स जो होते हैं वो गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया के पास होते हैं। तो वो उनको मिंट करते हैं, हम इनको प्रिंट, नोट्स को प्रिंट करते हैं। रिजर्व बैंक नोट्स को प्रिंट करता है और गवर्नमेंट उनको मिंट करती है। 4 मिंट्स हैं गवर्नमेंट की, और रिजर्व बैंक की प्रेसेस हैं, सालबोनी में प्रेस है और मैसूर में प्रेस है रिजर्व बैंक की, जहाँ पे नोट्स प्रिंट होते हैं। गवर्नमेंट की 2 प्रेसेस हैं, एक नासिक में है और एक देवास में है। सो फर्स्ट फंक्शन इज इशू करेंसी। दूसरा क्या है? बैंकर टू गवर्नमेंट। जैसे हमारा खाता होता है बैंकों के साथ, ऐसे ही गवर्नमेंट के जो खाते होते हैं वो रिजर्व बैंक के साथ होते हैं। और रिजर्व बैंक इज ऑल्सो अ बैंकर टू द बैंक्स। जैसे बैंक्स को भी कुछ मदद चाहिए होती है, उनको बैंक, आरबीआई इज नोन एज द लेंडर ऑफ द लास्ट रिजॉर्ट। सो बैंक्स ओपन देयर अकाउंट्स विद रिजर्व बैंक। मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी कंडक्ट करता है रिजर्व बैंक, फॉरेन एक्सचेंज मैनेज करता है, बैंक्स को सुपरवाइज और रेगुलेट करता है, और पेमेंट एंड सेटलमेंट सिस्टम को भी रेगुलेट करता है। और लास्ट रोल जो इम्पोर्टेंट रोल है वो है डेवलपमेंटल रोल। तो ये हर पॉइंट हम लोग धीमे धीमे स्लाइड बाय स्लाइड डिस्कस कर रहे थे। जहाँ तक करेंसी का सवाल था, इसका तो मैंने आपको पावर पॉइंट दिखाया था, उसमें काफ़ी बड़े फॉन्ट्स थे। सो आई विल नॉट बी रिपीटिंग दिस। इज दैट ओके? सो मॉरल टॉपिक इज नॉट क्लियर। मॉरल सुएशन, अच्छा मैं आएंगे उसके ऊपर अभी। सो बैंकिंग फंक्शन में जैसे आपको बताया है, बैंक्स को भी एक बैंकर की ज़रूरत पड़ती है। उनको अपने फंड्स को ट्रांसफ़र करना होता है, उनको अपने बैंक अकाउंट मेंटेन करना होता है, रिजर्व रखने होते हैं। एंड आरबीआई एक्ट्स एज द लेंडर ऑफ द लास्ट रिजॉर्ट। अल्टीमेटली हम उनको, बैंक्स को ही आरबीआई के पास पैसा लेने की जाना पड़ता है व्हेन दे नीड फंड्स। ओके, सिमिलरली जब सरकार जो है, सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट है एंड स्टेट गवर्नमेंट, अब दोनों को भी बैंकिंग फैसिलिटी चाहिए होती है। सो आरबीआई एक्ट्स एज द बैंकर टू द सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट एंड इट ऑल्सो एक्ट्स एज अ बैंकर टू द स्टेट गवर्नमेंट। लेकिन डिफरेंस ये है कि स्टेट गवर्नमेंट के साथ अलग अलग एग्रीमेंट्स होते हैं। इट इज़ नॉट टेकन फॉर ग्रांटेड कि आरबीआई विल फंक्शन एज अ बैंकर टू द स्टेट गवर्नमेंट। हर स्टेट गवर्नमेंट को रिजर्व बैंक के साथ एक एग्रीमेंट साइन करना पड़ता है कि आप हमको बैंकिंग फैसिलिटीज़ प्रोवाइड करेंगे। इस प्रकार से ये बैंकर टू द गवर्नमेंट भी होता है। अच्छा, अभी हम लोग बात कर रहे थे मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी की। ये मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी जो है, हमको कहाँ से पावर मिलता है आरबीआई को? फिस्कल पॉलिसी जो होती है वो तो गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया की होती है। इट इज़ रिलेटेड टू एक्सपेंडिचर। मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी होती है जिसकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी आरबीआई को आरबीआई एक्ट 1934 के जरिए मिली थी। नाउ द बेसिक पर्पस इज कि एक तरफ प्राइसेस हमारी स्टेबल होनी चाहिए और दूसरी तरफ हमारा ग्रोथ भी होना चाहिए। दोनों में को बैलेंस करने में थोड़ी दिक्कत होती है, क्योंकि अगर आपको ग्रोथ चाहिए तो आपको इसके लिए यू नीड लिक्विडिटी। इफ़ यू पुश लिक्विडिटी इट लीड्स टू इन्फ्लेशन। अगर इन्फ्लेशन हो जाता है तो प्राइसेस बढ़ जाती हैं, तो प्राइसेस कम करेंगे तो ग्रोथ कम ना हो जाए। तो ये बैलेंस जो होता है वो मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी के थ्रू करा जाता है, और ये मॉनेटरी इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स यूज़ करता है, उनको हम बोलते हैं रिजर्व बैंक को किस प्रकार से ये बैलेंस मेंटेन करता है थ्रू इंटरेस्ट रेट्स। कभी इंटरेस्ट रेट बढ़ाता है, रेपो रेट बढ़ाता है, कभी रेपो रेट गिराता है, कभी वो जो है बैंक रेट चेंज कर देता है, और उसमें एक है मॉरल सुएशन। हाँ, तो जब रिजर्व बैंक को लगता है जैसे कि ज़्यादा पैसे मार्केट में, पैसा मनी जो है, लिक्विडिटी जिसे हम बोलते हैं, टेक्निकल वर्ड इज लिक्विडिटी। सो जब मार्केट में ज़्यादा लिक्विडिटी हो जाती है तो उसको हमको स्क्वीज करना पड़ेगा। आई हैव टू विड्रॉ दैट मनी फ्रॉम द मार्केट जिससे इन्फ्लेशन ना हो। तो मैं क्या करूँगा, मैं G6 सेल करूँगा। व्हेन आई सेल गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज, G6 है गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज। हम बैंक्स को बेचेंगे जो गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज, तो वो पैसा हमारे पास आ जाएगा, तो उतना पैसा कम हो जाएगा। और वाइस वर्सा, इट वर्क्स बोथ वेज। जब ज़्यादा करना होता है वी बाय द सिक्योरिटीज। सो मॉरल सिचुएशन आपको एग्री टेक्स बता दिया है मैंने। मॉरल सिचुएशन में एक प्रोसेस, इट्स अ प्रोसेस बाय विच I can reduce the bank rate. I announce in my monetary policy that we are reducing the bank rate. But the question is, will the bank follow that? Bankers are commercial organizations. They are trying to see their profits. So the bank board has to take a decision कि हमारी कॉस्ट ऑफ बोरोइंग रिजर्व बैंक ने कम कर दी है, तो हम उसका बेनिफिट कस्टमर को पास करें, ना करें, या कितना करें। अक्सर ऐसा होता है कि रिजर्व बैंक तो कर देता है लेकिन बैंक्स डोंट डू इट। सो बैंक से मॉरल प्रेशर पड़ता है उनके ऊपर कि भाई आप लोग भी करिए, अगर आप देश को बेनिफिट देना है, अगर हमने आपको दिया है तो आप उसको नीचे कस्टमर्स को पास ऑन करिए। दैट इज कॉल्ड मॉरल सिचुएशन। वी अपील टू योर मॉरल सेंस। आई कैन नॉट फोर्स यू बिकॉज RBI विल नॉट डू माइक्रो मैनेजमेंट, हमारा मैक्रो मैनेजमेंट होता है। तो हम फोर्स तो नहीं कर सकते, लेकिन आपको हम सुझाव दे सकते हैं, आपसे हम बातचीत करके समझा सकते हैं। दैट इज कॉल्ड मॉरल सुएशन। ओके, लिक्विडिटी बोलते हैं, हमने अभी आपको बताया, लिक्विडिटी इज व्हाट वी कॉल एज पैसा, मार्केट में मनी, हमारा नोट्स इन सर्कुलेशन, हमारा अवेलेबिलिटी कैश कितना मार्केट में है जिससे हमारी इकॉनमी चल रही है, तो उसको हम लिक्विडिटी बोलते हैं। कभी हमको लिक्विडिटी बढ़ानी पड़ती है अगर हम चाहते हैं कि हमारी ग्रोथ हो, लोगों को पैसा मिले, क्रेडिट, सो इट गोज थ्रू द क्रेडिट ऑफ टेक। देयर हैज टू बी, द बैंक्स हैव टू लेंड मोर। When you lend more, there is growth. How can I lend more? I should have funds. Reserve Bank I should be able to borrow from the RBI. How will I borrow from RBI? RBI का बैंक रेट कम करता है जिससे कि हम आपको ज़्यादा पैसा दे सकें, आप उसको आगे सस्ता दे सकें। और जब हमको लगता है ज़्यादा पैसा हो गया है मार्केट में, लिक्विडिटी बढ़ गई है और इन्फ्लेशन होने वाला है, बिकॉज टू मच कैश इज परचेजिंग गुड्स, सो वी चेंज द बैंक रेट, जिससे कि बोरोइंग रिजर्व बैंक से कम हो जाती है। तो जब बोरोइंग कम हो जाएगी तो आगे लेंडिंग भी कम हो जाएगी। सो दिस इज हाउ द साइकिल गोज ऑन। ओके, सो ये तो आप लोगों ने देख लिया है रेगुलेशन, एंड ये सुनने का ज़्यादा था इसमें। The functions of RBI as a regulator and as a supervisor. थोड़ा crowded हुआ है ये slide, yes, but I have explained to you regulation में क्या करते हैं, difference between regulation and supervision। और दो प्रकार की supervision होती हैं, on site and off site, जिससे कि हम बैंक्स के ऊपर निगरानी रख सकें। रेगुलेशन होता है डूज एंड डोंट, सिंपल लैंग्वेज में, भाई आपको लाइसेंस चाहिए, कम टू अस, वी विल असेस यू बिफोर वी गिव अ लाइसेंस। इट्स नॉट ईजी टू गिव अ लाइसेंस। द बैंक को ठोक पीट के दिया जाता है लाइसेंस। समटाइम्स द बेस्ट ऑफ द कंपनीज हु अप्लाई टू द रिजर्व बैंक डू नॉट गेट लाइसेंसेस। सो ब्रांच एक्सपेंशन हुआ, उसके लिए गाइडलाइंस क्या है, करेंसी की गाइडलाइंस क्या है, मैनेज, और उसके आपका बैंक को अमेलगमेट करना है या उसको लिक्विडेशन में डालना है बैंक को, तो ये सब जो मुद्दे होते हैं ये रिजर्व बैंक उसके लिए सर्कुलर्स इशू करता है, बैंक्स को रेगुलेट करता है। और बैंक्स को इट इज़, दे हैव नो चॉइस बट टू फॉलो। अगर आप फॉलो नहीं करेंगे RBI गाइडलाइंस, तो हमारे सुपरविजन विंग जो है वो आपको इंस्पेक्शन के टाइम पे पकड़ सकता है, गलतियां निकाल सकता है, कमियां निकाल सकता है, जिसकी कंप्लायंस आपको देनी पड़ेगी। और अगर आप कंप्लायंस नहीं देंगे तो फिर एक्शन लिया जाता है, पेनल्टी लगती है, पीनल प्रोविजंस होते हैं रिजर्व बैंक के। और हम किसको सुपरवाइज करते हैं? हम सारे कमर्शियल बैंक्स को करते हैं एक्सेप्ट RRBs। क्यों? ये आप बताएंगे सोच के, who supervises the RRBs? NABARD. NABARD supervises the RRBs. RBI only regulates. फिर लोकल एरिया बैंक्स, नए बैंक्स जो आए हैं ये जितने भी, सो कमर्शियल बैंक्स के अलावा यू हैव लोकल एरिया बैंक्स, यू हैव पेमेंट बैंक्स। एग्रीटेक आपका जवाब दे दिया है, who supervises RRB? NABARD. स्मॉल फाइनेंस बैंक्स, ये सब जो नए बैंक आए हैं, फॉरेन बैंक्स जो होते हैं, अर्बन कोऑपरेटिव बैंक्स होते हैं, ये RBI सुपरवाइज करता है। और पेमेंट सिस्टम, अब हम बात करते हैं पेमेंट सिस्टम की। यस, नीरज और प्रिया दोनों ने ठीक जवाब दिया है। आगे बढ़ते हैं। वी हैव the next function of regulation and payment and settlement systems. So regulated, a payment and settlement system has become a very important element in the banking system. More and more digital payments are happening. आजकल हम लोग का क्या हो रहा है, पहले पेपर बेस्ड क्लियरिंग सिस्टम होता था, जिसमें क्या था कि 60% पेपर चेक्स होते थे, जैसे आप बोलिए चेक्स, पेपर बेस्ड इज चेक्स, पर वॉल्यूम के टर्म्स में 60% in terms of volume, but only 11% वैल्यू होती थी उन चेक्स में। तो उसमें काफ़ी कम्बरसम प्रोसीजर होता था एंड लॉट ऑफ टाइम वॉज गेटिंग वेस्टेड। दैट हैज़ नाउ बीन not fully replaced, but systems like the RTGS, the real time gross settlement system, NEFT, ECS, ये आ गए हैं पेमेंट सिस्टम, जिनके थ्रू आप बैंक अपनी ऑनलाइन पेमेंट्स, ये जो RTGS होता है हाई वॉल्यूम का होता है, लार्ज वैल्यू ट्रांजैक्शंस। NEFT तो आप लोग सब करते होंगे, वी ऑल डू इट इन आवर डेली लाइफ। नेट बैंकिंग, जिसको हम बोलते हैं नेट बैंकिंग करना, तो आप नेट बैंकिंग करके, और ECS, आप कितनी पेमेंट्स ECS के थ्रू करते हैं। चेक ट्रंकेशन इज इम्पॉर्टेंट। पहले क्या होता था, जब चेक क्लियरिंग में जाता था तो पूरा चेक फिजिकली, सो आपने चेक इशू करा है, वो यहाँ से बाय पोस्ट इट वुड गो टू द ब्रांच, और यू हैड टू गो टू द क्लियरिंग हाउस जहाँ पे उसको डिपॉजिट करा जाता था। फिर वहाँ पे क्लियरिंग हाउस में बैंकर्स बैठ के अपना नोट, अपने चेक्स को नेटिंग करते थे, लेकिन वो उसमें भी बहुत टाइम लगता था। सो चेक क्लियरिंग में लोगों को दिक्कत होती थी कि भाई चेक रियलाइज करने में टाइम लग रहा है। ऑल दीज थिंग्स इम्पैक्टेड द ग्रोथ, द इंडस्ट्री, द बिजनेस, द इंडस्ट्री। इसलिए अब जैसे चेक ट्रंकेशन जो RBI ने इंट्रोड्यूस करा, उसमें चेक की इमेज ले ली जाती है by the branch. So the physical check is kept in the branch and the image is transmitted to the other end, जिसके थ्रू क्लियरिंग हो जाने का बहुत जल्दी हो जाता है। ATM तो आपको मालूम ही है, ATM और पॉइंट ऑफ सेल, these two modes are also used for withdrawing cash, making payments. ECS is electronic clearing system. Electronic clearing system. अभी RTGS की लिमिट और ये जो है ये मेरे पास इस समय नहीं है, बट RTGS इज हाई वैल्यू ट्रांजैक्शंस। NEFT में लिमिट होती है कि एक दिन में आप इसके ज़्यादा नहीं कर सकते हैं। सो स्मॉलर पेमेंट्स जो होती हैं हम लोगों की, वी डू इट थ्रू NEFT up to 1 lakh or so, and the larger ones we go through the RTGS, real time gross settlement. तो रिजर्व बैंक ने नेशनल पेमेंट्स कॉरपोरेशन ऑफ इंडिया, व्हाट वी कॉल एज द NPCI, इसको क्रिएट करा गया है, दिस इज एन अम्ब्रेला ऑर्गेनाइजेशन। तो सारे जो रिटेल पेमेंट सिस्टम्स हैं वो उसके तहत उसके अंडर आ जाते हैं, एंड दैट इज बीइंग नाउ लुक्ड आफ्टर बाय NPCI. Then we come to this function of POS is point of sale. आपको जो जहाँ पे आप क्रेडिट कार्ड को स्वाइप करते हैं उसको हम POS बोलते हैं। वो मशीन होती है, अगर आप पेट्रोल पंप पे जाएंगे एंड यू गेट योर पेट्रोल फिल्ड इन, or you go to a shop like West Side and you buy something and you're using a credit card, they have this black kind of a machine where you put your card in and swipe it. That is called point of sale. Okay, now managing foreign exchange. एक ज़माना था when foreign exchange was a scarce commodity in India. That time, this act, today we have Foreign Exchange Management Act. Earlier we had something called FERA, if you heard of the act, FEM की जगह होता था R, FERA. Anybody knows the full form of FERA? RBI was established in 1935. I said this earlier, RBI Act of 1934, 1st April, yes, April Fool's Day, that is the important way of remembering the date RBI was established, 1st April 1935. And you know that the first central office of the Reserve Bank was not in Mumbai, it was in, can anyone tell me? Can anyone tell me the first office of the Reserve Bank, central office, कहाँ पे था? I am looking at the chat, waiting for an answer. Yes, Naman and Suhas, you're right. Foreign Exchange Regulation Act, that was called FERA. It was draconian in nature. उसका बहुत डर होता था, लोगों के मन में भय होता था that if you violate FERA, you could be jailed. But that's the time of scarcity. When the liberalization happened, the RBI, the government changed FERA into FEMA. So regulation, Foreign Exchange Regulation Act जो था, it became Foreign Exchange Management Act. Yes, the first central office of the Reserve Bank was in Calcutta. You are right. You are right on that. And why was it Calcutta? Because at that time Calcutta was a booming city and it was the port. The government, the Britishers had decided that it was easier for them to manage from Calcutta, but later on it was moved to Mumbai. So coming back to foreign exchange, so now when we have good foreign exchange, our surplus balances are okay. In 1999, this Foreign Exchange Management Act came into being, and the whole idea is now we don't question. It is a facilitation process. The purpose of the act is to facilitate more trade, bring in more money, less questions are asked. It's a more liberalized approach. So when it manages foreign exchange, RBI issues licenses. Every bank cannot do it. Only those banks which are called ADs. ADs means authorized dealers. Authorized dealers means authorized to deal in foreign exchange. Agritech FERA is only as a reference point. आपको FERA जानने का ज़्यादा ज़रूरत नहीं है. FERA जो था वो regulate करता था foreign exchange को. इसका मतलब ये था कि every penny that I gave you to an individual, supposing you are you are suffering from a disease for which you want money to go to the US for treatment, medical treatment के लिए आपको अगर अमेरिका जाना होता था उस ज़माने में, तो अंडर फेरा आपका पूरा डॉक्यूमेंटेशन लिया जाता था कि कौन सा डॉक्टर है, क्या बीमारी है, what is the problem with you, what is the estimate that the overseas hospital has given you, and then the bank would release Reserve Bank would release that much amount of money in foreign exchange in a permit. And when you came back, you had to give me a whole account of the entire expenditure, that if I gave you $100, please let me know how much money you have utilized, what is the balance left, please surrender the balance to the government bank. That was FERA. अब उसको आप थोड़ा, that was just to give you an idea. FEMA is more liberal. तो FEMA में ये सब कुछ करने का जरूरत नहीं है. रिजर्व बैंक ने परमिट राज बंद कर दिया, रिजर्व बैंक ने परमिट इशू करना बंद कर दिया और बैंक्स को डेलीगेट कर दिया. ऑथराइज्ड डीलर्स को बोला भाई ये काम आप लोग करेंगे. वी विल ओनली सी दैट द एक्ट इज फॉलोड, सो डोंट फ्लाउट द एक्ट. सो यू हैव योर करंट अकाउंट, आपका कैपिटल अकाउंट होता है, वो सब जो है उसकी गाइडलाइन देके बैंकों के ऊपर करंट अकाउंट पूरा वो कर दिया. 100% इट इज विद द बैंक्स. फॉर कैपिटल अकाउंट एक्सपेंडिचर, yes, you have to come to the Reserve Bank. Okay, so then the next function is the developmental role. आपको थोड़ा font बढ़ा देता हूँ मैं यहाँ पर. I think the picture can be deleted right now, just to give you an idea as to what kind of camps, financial literacy camps RBI holds. This is a live picture of a camp which was held, where you can see a lot of women and men participating in this, but I will remove that and I would rather increase the font size जिससे कि आपको देखने में दिक्कत ना हो. I hope you are able to see this now. The font size is fairly large. Okay. Praveen, government session on government schemes. No, not. I am not taking any session, and I do not think we have a session on government schemes. But in the Bpedia, you will find a lot of information on government schemes. Don't worry about that. Yes, content में पहले से editing होना चाहिए. You are right, but I did not realize that the font was that small that you would not be able to see. So don't worry. It doesn't. We have still half an hour to go. So I wanted to take a little, okay, so developmental role, this is something unique to the Reserve Bank. So in addition to the 7 functions, the first 7 functions, वो है, ये जो है एक यूनिक फंक्शन है जो सब सेंट्रल बैंक्स नहीं करते हैं. और इसमें क्या पर्पस है? You see, we are a growing economy and we want, financial services should be available to everyone. हमारा देश वैसा नहीं है कि we have banks in every nook and corner, or people are literate enough. So initially banks का tendency थी to be only located in bigger cities, but when we talk of financial inclusion, credit availability to the productive sectors of the economy, इन सब के लिए फाइनेंशियल लिटरेसी होनी चाहिए. लोगों को मालूम होना चाहिए कि बैंक खाता खोलने से what are the advantages you get, why should I open an account? There's a very nice comic strip by the Reserve Bank called Raju and the Money Tree. Just Google for Raju and the Money Tree. It's a comic strip like any comic, with characters, but it explains very nicely about basic banking features. So the idea is, why a comic strip? A, it's easy to understand, and B, because then, if children read it, they grow up with that knowledge. It is empowerment. That is called financial literacy. we would like to introduce financial literacy amongst the women, amongst children, because these are the people of the, the children are going to be the future leaders, or the ones who are going to lead the economy. So that developmental role in the form of financial literacy, financial inclusion, जो EWS के ग्रुप होते हैं, जो वीकर सेक्शंस होते हैं, जहाँ तक बैंकिंग नहीं पहुँच पाती है, उनको समझ नहीं होती है, वो सबको ध्यान में रखते हुए RBI ने गाइडलाइंस बनाई हैं फॉर फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन, दैट नोबडी शुड बी लेफ्ट आउट. और डेवलपमेंटल रोल में क्या होता है? सेटिंग अप ऑफ इंस्टीट्यूट्स. आपने देखा कि नाबार्ड सेटअप हुआ था एक ज़माने में. RBI or the government thinking was that there should be a special focus on agriculture. So RBI sponsored 100% subsidiary of the Reserve Bank. Initially, it was there. Then same thing happened for the housing sector. So 100% subsidiary of the Reserve Bank came in the form of National Housing Bank. Housing sector का credit needs को मद्देनजर रखते हुए these institutions were created. So therefore, RBI creates new institutions, and also, as I told you in the beginning somewhere, that 2 new institutions were set up recently by RBI. One is those 2 colleges that I spoke about. या इसका PDF आपको मिल जाएगा. So can anybody remember those 2 institutes that I spoke about in the beginning? Keep in mind, if there's a quiz, you can answer in there. And then you have what I call as the consumer education. आजकल इतने frauds होते हैं, इतनी complaints होती हैं, that people are, harassed by banks sometimes. Their loans are not disbursed properly. They have been overcharged. The banks are not responding. So for that, the Reserve Bank has created a department, Consumer Education and Protection, और Banking Ombudsman scheme बनाई है. Ombudsman क्या होता है? जैसे एक quasi legal body है जो रिजर्व बैंक की भी तहत होती है, और आपको जो भी बैंकिंग रिलेटेड कंप्लेंट्स होती हैं, you can go and complain to the banking ombudsman. Banking ombudsman will ask the bank its response and then take a judgment. So it can pass judgment which the bank is required to comply, but the bank can also contest if they feel that the judgment is not correct. So banking ombudsman scheme is there both for the NBFCs and for the banks. So this is a part of the developmental role of the Reserve Bank. 8 functions are over. Now I'm taking a little short break before we go into, we have a little quiz we could do. Please also remember, ये आपको, I want to discuss this point, is important. The UCBs क्या है? Urban Cooperative Banks. Now ये जो हैं, these are primarily cooperative societies, and they are under the State Cooperative Societies Act. So the cooperative structure, please keep in mind that the cooperative structure, be it the UCBs, the state cooperative banks, or the district central cooperative banks, these are all a part of the cooperative society structure. But so there is duality of control. ये जरूर important है, ये point जो है, it is important. The dual control, which means that the Registrar of Cooperative Societies, RCS, and the Central Registrar of Cooperative Societies, इन लोगों का भी रोल होता है, और RBI भी इनको कंट्रोल करता है. तो RBI कैसे कंट्रोल करता है? Regulation is of all the cooperative banks, regulation is with the Reserve Bank. लेकिन जहाँ तक मैनेजमेंट का सवाल है, रजिस्ट्रेशन का सवाल है, ऑडिट, or the board is to be superseded, liquidation, that is looked after by the Registrar of Cooperative Societies. Please remember this. Yes, College of Supervisors. Abhinav, RBI Staff College नहीं है, या ऋषभ इज राइट, RBI Academy, रिजर्व बैंक अकेडमी, ये दो हैं, नए हैं ये, these are the new institutes. CAB पुणे, कॉलेज ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर बैंकिंग एंड स्टाफ कॉलेज, ये तो पुराने हैं, बहुत पुराने इंस्टीट्यूट्स हैं. We were talking of the new ones. Okay. So this is important point about the supervisory structure. Then we have something more important is the housing finance companies. A little I would like to explain to you about what is an HFC and what is the change that has happened here. जब NHB established करा गया था, the whole idea was that they wanted a focused body which would look after the credit needs and the growth of housing finance. So NHB, National Housing Bank, was formed. National Housing Bank was both the regulator and the supervisors of the housing finance companies. Subsequently, it was somewhere in the year 2016-17 that there was, and Reserve Bank was the 100%. It was the 100% housing bank was the 100% subsidiary of the Reserve Bank. But then around this time period in 16-17, RBI unloaded its shares and they were purchased by the government. So the NHB became a government, not with the Reserve Bank anymore. The government of India owned National Housing Bank, but at that point of time, the National Housing Bank, which was supervising and regulating housing finance companies, their function was truncated, and the regulation of housing finance companies was passed on to the Reserve Bank, so that ultimately housing finance company is like an NBFC. With us, so यहाँ पे housing finance company का specific purpose होता है housing finance के लिए, और एनबीएफसी के फंक्शंस कई सारे हो सकते हैं, और व्हीकल लोन भी हो सकता है, कार लोन भी हो सकता है, एजुकेशन लोन भी हो सकता है, व्हाटएवर. So that is how we distinguish, but broadly as an activity, an entity आप देखेंगे, so it's doing the same function. Activity वही है, इसलिए now while the supervision of housing finance company lies with the NHB, the regulation of housing finance companies is passed on to the Reserve Bank, and the moment Reserve Bank took over, it has brought in this major change. Net owned funds company, जिसको अगर आपको housing finance company खोलनी है तो आपके पास 20 करोड़ का NOF होना चाहिए. This is a requirement by for 2022 तक, or is it 2023? The banks have to, the HFCs have to comply with this requirement. So you can take housing finance for a purchasing of a house, construction or renovation. कोई भी आपकी रहने की जगह जो होती है उसके लिए आपको क्रेडिट मिलता है from a housing finance company. RBI is only refinancing. RBI is not financing individual loans. वो housing finance companies जो इस business में है housing finance के, उनको refinance करता है. Okay, now we don't have time for all this, but this is important. I would just spend a little time on this. आपने सुना होगा NPS के बारे में. All of you keep reading about NPS, and NPS, the full form is non-performing assets. College, or where are the two institutes set up? Well, the College of the Supervisors and the RBI Academy both are in Mumbai, to my understanding. सो एनपीएस में क्या होता है कि नॉन परफॉर्मिंग एसेट्स, वो एसेट्स जिनको बैंक ने फंड करा है वो नॉट परफॉर्म नहीं कर रहे हैं. परफॉर्म का क्या मतलब हुआ कि दे आर नॉट, द बोरोअर इज नॉट एबल टू सर्विस द प्रिंसिपल और द इंटरेस्ट इन अ टाइमली मैनर. तो उसको हम बोलते हैं स्पेशल मेंशन में आ जाता है एसएमए अकाउंट. दे कॉल इट द एसएमए अकाउंट कि ओवरड्यू हो गया है, योर EMI is overdue but you have not been able to pay, so the bank is now going to monitor that account more in a special manner so that it doesn't turn into an NPA. NPA कब बनेगा वो? When 90 days, 3 महीने तक अगर वो देखता है बैंक that the principal and the interest have not been serviced, then it is classified as an NPA. Standard is when there is no default, so it falls into the NPA category. And NPA का क्या classification? Substandard कब हो जाता है? जब ये 90 days बढ़ते बढ़ते 12 महीने हो जाते हैं. When it is 1 year and the account continues to be non-performing, then they say this account has become substandard now. For the last 12 months, there is an overdue which is mounting up, interest is mounting up because the borrower is not in a position to pay. Either the principal is not being paid, or if he's paying the principal, the interest is not coming, and so the interest keeps mounting and overdue keeps increasing. Then if it exceeds 12 months, it falls into what we call as doubtful. What does doubtful mean? Now you start wondering whether there is so much of overdue कि वो पैसा वापस कर पाएगा कि नहीं. क्रेडिट हमारा जो है अब बैंक का अकाउंट स्टिकी हो रहा है. It's become sticky. It's not very easy to get the money out of this guy. That possibility is there. And finally, loss. Now I know that, for example, Kingfisher. It became an NPA and now it's almost a loss account. I cannot recover. So the bank resorts to selling the assets and trying to recover as much as it can. But at the end of the day, the balance sheet is hit and your capital gets eroded because then you have to make a provision for that. So this is about NPAs. So I think we could stop at this point because I have another 15 minutes left. SMA stands for Special Mention Accounts. SMA, Special Mention Account. So, yes, I have I think broadly covered many of the things that for phase 1 purposes, if you're going to be getting any questions, you should be able to answer, because इससे ज़्यादा deep जाने की हमको ज़रूरत नहीं है. We should be familiar with the terms, their meanings, and a little bit of history. So if when I talk of history, when was the bank, when was the act enacted, when was the bank established, where was the capital, where was the bank earlier situated, the head office or the central office, about the currency features, about FERA and FEMA, you have an idea now. So in 10 minutes, I cannot give you a quiz. I can do 2-3 questions. Let's see how you guys do it. Okay, so this is the question. RBI performs the function of financial supervision under the guidance of Internal Debt Management, Board of Financial Supervision, Monetary Policy Department, Financial Stability Unit, or none of these. Let me have your answers in the chat. Please go to the RBI website if you want to read about RBI. The best source is the RBI website, where things are quite clear and there is a FAQs. I would suggest that you can don't read the circulars. You don't have to go to the directives. Just go through the FAQs. Go through some, the financial. There are films, there are comic strips, there are small inputs which will help you a lot. And if you have a doubt, please go to the website and see the function of a department. It's given there. Normally, they will not ask questions on individual functioning of a department, but still, for familiarity's sake, you can go there. So the answer is 2, the Board of Financial Supervision, correct? That's the right answer. The next question is, okay, who regulates monetary supply policy in India? Well, the answer is already given in there. It is not don't get confused, not the Finance Ministry. Finance Ministry क्या करती है? कौन सी पॉलिसी निकालती है? किसको देखती है बजट के टाइम पे? BFS जो था वो 1999 में सेटअप हुआ था, शायद 1994. So the answer is RBI, yes, but I was asking फाइनेंस मिनिस्ट्री के जरिए कौन सी पॉलिसी आती है? किसी को याद है? Don't give me 2 answers. Give me the answer I'm asking. Fiscal policies, Government of India, Ministry of Finance, fiscal policy comes in from there. Okay. The Reserve Bank of India has constituted a new department called Dash for monitoring of money, government securities, and forex market. So, Financial Share Market Department, Department of Economic Analysis and Policy, Financial Market Regulation Department, and Enforcement Directorate, but Enforcement Department, but none of these. Yes, fiscal policy is right. Come to question number 3. Ravi, Vipul, Abhinav, please go to question number 3 now. Which is the department, a new department which RBI created for the purpose of monitoring money, government? 3. Financial Market Regulation Department. Right, that's a correct answer. The IAS aspirant has given the right answer. The next question is, what is the process or mechanism under which some precautionary actions are taken against ailing banks? एलिंग बैंक का क्या मतलब हुआ? वो बीमार बैंक जो बोलते हैं हम. बीमार कौन से होते हैं? जिनका कैपिटल इरोड हो जाता है. उनका कैपिटल क्यों इरोड होता है? बिकॉज उनके एनपीएस बढ़ गए हैं. उनके एनपीएस क्यों बढ़े हैं? क्योंकि उन्होंने बैड लेंडिंग करी है. दे हैव गिवन लेंडिंग टू एंटिटीज which are not sound, and they have not done their due diligence. They have not done, before assessing. The assessment has been poor, or assessment was okay, but the follow-up has been poor. Which means when I give a loan, as a bank, my credit facility given to somebody doesn't stop at giving him the credit facility, disbursing the loan, but follow-up is required. So if I don't take follow-up, the banks are going to get into a bad shape. तो इनमें से 5 में से कौन सा जवाब सही है? Yes, all of you are saying number 4. Prompt Corrective Action, or PCA. PCA क्या है? It's a framework under which the banks with weak financials are put under watch by RBI. That look, you have weak financials, you have to now give us within a certain time frame your line of action. In what manner, what steps are you going to be taking to come out of the mess? I want to have a flow chart, a timeline for your 1 year's action. If the banks fail to give a convincing report to the Reserve Bank, then the next step is taken, where the bank says we are going to now merge this bank, or the bank goes into closure, or we will merge it with some other entity and some other bank takes over such a bank. आपको केवल पीसीए के बारे में जानना जरूरी है. व्हाट इज पीसीए जो हमने समझाया उतना ही बहुत है. फेज 1 के लिए दैट इज सफिशिएंट. Question number 5. Who is responsible for minting of coins in India? I'm not giving you a choice here. I want to see your answers in the chat. Who is responsible for the minting of coins in India? Yes. Trigger point, Mr. Singh, सारा अभी आपको समझाया ना how it happens. I explained the whole process. कोई बोल रहा है मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ फाइनेंस, कोई बोल रहा है गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया. गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया, यस यू आर राइट. द रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ऑफ मिंटिंग ऑफ कॉइन्स इज विद द गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया. ओके, सो आई थिंक आई शुड स्टॉप हियर. ट्रिगर पॉइंट क्या हो सकता है? अभी व्हाट डिड आई एक्सप्लेन, that when the bank is having weak financials, that is the trigger point for PCA. Why does it have weak financials? The weak financials are because of NPAs. Why are there so many NPAs? Because of bad lending, because of bad decisions, because of poor follow-up. So is that clear, Mr. Singh? Yes. So your answer for question number 5 is right. I shall stop the class here, and I hope, despite the initial lacuna where you were not able to see the slides because of small fonts, which I would keep in mind the next time, the rest of the things were pretty clear to you guys, and you should be now in a position to be ready for RBI related phase 1. Of course, there is no end to questions, but we have taken up the broad ones, the bigger ones, the important ones. Anyone who is appearing for the RBI exam should be at least familiar with this terminology and these words. So therefore, the first perhaps 15 minutes, you guys were not very comfortable, you were not very happy about it because of the font size, and I was not able to see your chat on my phone, and I was wondering why nobody is talking. So all the very best to you guys, and do give your feedback, and have a good day. Thank you so much. Goodbye.